It's time to Take Two with Ron Decker.
Good morning. It's election season, and we have two candidates. On my left, Chris Cannon, a Republican from Utah's 3rd Congressional District, seeking re-election. On my right, Christian Burridge, Democratic challenger in Utah's 3rd Congressional District. This is the finals. Voters will decide who goes to Congress in November. You, sir, recently made headlines all over the state.
A lot of them.
A lot of them.
All over the country.
By saying that Foley, who sent, I guess, inappropriate emails to pages, that he might have been egged on, I think were your words, by pages who were precocious.
Well, I was actually, the interesting thing is that KSL's, or the radio station, pardon me.
It was KSL.
It was KSL, okay. Actually played the whole tape, and while the news headlines yesterday said that I'd backed off, the fact is the tape is very clear. This is news out of no news, but I think it was a great opportunity to focus on the issue, which is how do we protect our kids? We're going to let Congress protect pages? Well, we tried to do that, and now we have technology. We have cell phones that text, cell phones that do pictures. I know you want to break in, but I want to say this, Rod. And protecting kids is a lot harder. What I was saying in that interview, and what I'll say over and over again, is we need to protect our kids by teaching them. Parents need to tell them what they should do and how they should do it. 16-year-old kids are precocious. Compared to you and me, they know a lot more about technology, and they know a lot more about sex. And they think they're wise. And our job as parents is to help them know where the boundaries are.
Okay, now, as a matter of fact, do you have any evidence? It was in the Drudge Report, that's all I know, that says that these pages egged on Foley.
It was actually in a local newspaper in Oklahoma, where the kid lives. And right after, I was on CNN a day or two ago, and right after that we had the lawyer who's representing the kid, and he didn't deny it. I think that there's clearly these kids are involved.
You think the kids egged on Foley?
Well, I think that's what the story said. What happened here is you got a bunch of kids sitting around, it seems like, and they are laughing at this congressman, who's a predator. Now, the congressman is absolutely without justification here. This is not blaming anybody. It's telling parents, your kids need guidelines so they don't get off track and allow predators and weird people to do bad things.
Was Foley egged on by precocious pages?
Look, he's trying to change the subject. The fact is we need to have more oversight of what's going on with the pages in Congress. These parents send their kids off to Congress. The congressman, the leadership, they are the stewards of these kids. And the congressman is trying to change the subject and point it at the victims, which is absolutely outrageous.
If you're elected, will you vote to throw out Dennis Hastert? I mean, but beyond just partisan, do you believe he ought to be thrown out because he knew and didn't act?
We need to have a full investigation, find out what happened. If he knew what happened, I think that he needs to be thrown out. But there needs to be a full and adequate investigation first, and then once we know. But by blaming this on the victims, it changes the subject and makes it more difficult to find out what happened.
Are you blaming the victims?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm warning parents. Kids are precocious, they think they're wise, and they need guidelines, and that's all this is about.
Dennis Hastert.
Oh, look, actually, Christian and I agree here. If there's some knowledge, if there's some culpability, he needs to go. But I don't believe you're going to find that. He's a great guy. He's a caring guy, and you got a complex program here where we're trying.
There are people who said they told him. They sat in a meeting with him and told him there were inappropriate emails.
Well, I think that at this point you have people who sat in meetings with others who said they sat in meetings with him, and we'll have to see how that sorts out. But what happened in the meeting? I mean, look, this is a complex program. We've had problems like this in the past. This is not new, and we do a lot to protect those kids.
Quickly, on this topic, do you have any more to say?
I just think that it's irresponsible to blame the kids. We need to not be using Republican talking points. This needs to be a nonpartisan issue. We need to get to the bottom of it and find out exactly what happened.
You're in Congress. What are you going to do about the war in Iraq?
Well, I think that it's predictable what was going to happen. We knew that this would happen back in 1992.
You knew it.
The first Bush administration knew what was going to happen.
You knew it was going to happen.
If you invade Iraq, it's most diplomacy experts
You knew it?
Well, most diplomacy experts
Did
knew.
you know it?
Well, I was very young in 1992,
okay.
but I've studied this. But most diplomacy experts back in 1992 knew that if you invade Iraq, it's very predictable. It's going to break down to Sunni and Shiite and Kurdish civil war. That's what's going to happen. I think the best policy is what James Baker has been talking about recently in the news, is that we need to have devolution of the process.
Chop it up. Have
yes.
Kurds, have Shias, have Sunnis, and they all live apart. Each one of them has their own
self-government.
The war.
We don't have a civil war with the Kurds. The Kurds are staying out of it. They're governing themselves largely because we created an environment where they could create a government.
I hear at least some of them would like their own country.
Oh, absolutely. I think they would like to split off with the Kurds in Turkey. I personally would like to see a country where you had a rule of law. That's going to take some time. That's where, like in America, we have all kinds of people with all kinds of beliefs, but the rule of law is what protects us. If you can do that in Iraq, then that is replicable everywhere else in the world, in the context of every single country.
So, dismember the country. What do you think of that?
At this point, that's premature. I think now the best thing that happens...
Eventually, maybe?
Look, I think people ought to have a right to decide in the long term. Right now, these people need to decide what the rule of law is.
The people that need to decide are the people of Iraq. And it's obvious that even James Baker, who is well known in the Republican Party, is saying that's what's going to happen. Most diplomacy experts say it's going to break down into three regions.
Baghdad, it's got a lot of Sunnis, a lot of Shias. Do you kick out the Sunnis or the Shias?
Well, that's yet to be worked out. But I think if you provide a region for each one of them where they're predominantly disposed of, then they can go.
But you're not going to say whether you're going to kick out the Sunnis or the Shias. They're not going to want to move. They've lived there for generations.
Well, we've had divisions in Palestine very similar to that, and we don't know what the boundaries are going to be at this point. But they can be designated.
In Palestine.
Well, but there has been stability for time on and off. And you can have stability in the region.
A vote for you is a vote for more war, for war stretching out as far as we can see. Is that fair?
A vote for me is a vote against terrorism.
Stay there as long forever if necessary. Deny these people a geographic base. That's what we need to do in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And you'll stay there. You'll vote for troops to stay there as long as there are bombs and Al-Qaeda's doing stuff and there's trouble.
As long as there's a threat to the American people, we need to confront it where it is. Now, much better to have a government that has a rule of law in Iraq. That's the best of all worlds. It's a little harder to do in Afghanistan, and that's proving to be tough, and that's going to be more difficult for a long term. But having a rule of law where people have the opportunity to educate themselves and to participate in government, that's how you solve this problem.
You're a conservative, and yet we've never seen such deficits. You and your colleagues have
no, you're deficits. Wrong. We had predicted for last year a deficit of $560 billion, and it was just over $200 billion. So the tax cuts, that's small deficits in historic comparison, and way less than half of what we expected. So we had a war, we had a terrorist event, we had a recession, and we had huge tax cuts. And the American people took those huge tax cuts and invested and created a robust economy.
If a vote for you, is it a vote for keeping the tax cuts, for more tax cuts?
Yes, absolutely.
Keeping the tax cuts.
Keeping the tax cuts and for more tax cuts.
More tax cuts of the same sort, the same tax, an essential extension of the tax cut program.
I want to make the current tax cuts permanent, and then I'd like to do something that is actually different than what we've done in the past. And I think most people in Congress don't want to do the same, more of the same. Instead of taxing dividends by 50%, let's tax dividends entirely and not tax corporations.
Okay.
Let's free up America from the biggest burden of regulation that ever existed in the history of mankind.
And corporation tax, if you get a chance to.
That's absolutely wrong. What he's doing is he's passing on the burden of the wealthiest individuals in the United States onto our children and onto our grandchildren. It's absolutely irresponsible.
Are you going to repeal? Are you going to vote to repeal the Bush tax cuts?
I think that there are millionaire windfalls that need to be getting rid of. You know, I'm not a millionaire.
You're going to vote to repeal them?
I would vote to repeal the millionaire windfalls, of course.
Okay, all of the Bush tax cuts you'd vote to repeal?
Right. I think that we need to have our incentives where it goes to the middle class.
For example?
We need to have more child tax credits. We need to have more exemptions for people that are on payroll tax. Taxing payroll is the most regressive style.
That's true.
And what we need to do is where much is given, much is required. Those that are bringing in revenue need to be taxed. It's absolutely regressive.
Okay,
but the wealthy don't pay taxes. Only people that have income.
In your world, they don't.
No. In the world of wealthy people, they don't pay taxes. In the world of people who are getting wealthy, the people who might disrupt the wealth that's existing, those people are the people that pay taxes, and those are where the severe effect of your kind of taxation policy would go. Those are the people that create jobs. I want jobs in America.
That's wrong.
Okay, you're going to repeal the Bush tax cuts. You're not going to repeal the corporate income tax. You're going to raise taxes for the rich a lot. And then you'll add some deductions for the middle class.
That's right. That's the best way to have incentive, and that's what creates jobs. You have people getting on eBay. You have people going out and starting businesses. I'm a small business owner. I know what it's like. I just started a little law firm, and giving tax cuts to the biggest corporations of the world do not let me compete as a small businessman.
Speaking of revenue, we're going to raise some right now. We'll take a commercial break. Our number is 973-3144. If you have a question for Republican Congressman Chris Cannon, Democratic challenger Christian Burridge. We'll be back after this.